All right, it's actually possible that we are live again, but that's not really working for me because great. So right now, I can have great. So guys, I'm rebooting my computer. Yes. So as to get control of things again, which is unreal. Nice. So, are we back? You guys hear me? Okay, cool. All right. Whew. Yeah, gotta say, not a fan. Not a fan of that. I actually have my computers never went down and my hard drives never went down, which is good. I have like power units for those, and just want to protect them from yeah, Rob, tell me about it. Takedown, like breakdown. Thanks for your patience, guys. Let's see if this loaded. Autosave. Let's do the autosave one. Let's see how autosave works. Here. Matt, my experience with the computer so far has been just great. I have no complaints whatsoever, really. Other than I have a little discoloration on the display, but I have 3 years of Apple Care and I'm going to get that treated at some point. The performance has been just phenomenal. I've got absolutely nothing to complain about. Let's go on with the... Okay, so what do we do now? You guys hear that? I didn't. Wow. So Finland actually has one of the more stable power grids, believe me or not. But it's been really thundering and lightning a lot recently, and also heavy winds. So I'm guessing that somewhere nearby a tree fell onto I don't know, power line, something like that, and but they actually got it back really quickly too. So let's hope, fingers crossed, that that won't happen again. And we were left here. This is a snare sound that I've tuned to the rest of the track with a plugin called Torque. And how this works is that you find where the body and the basically root harmonic of the snare is. Once you click the speaker icon, you can actually listen to it like that. And now I've applied minus 320 cents. So where do we go? Yeah, it goes to actually 1, 2, 3, sort of one below the key, but I must have had a reason to tune it off. Like I said, sometimes drum tuning is not that simple as having something analyze a drum, because they rarely are just one single frequency, but they have like a sloping frequency envelope. I've got another one here. Oh, and let's not forget. So I had an... Oh, yeah. So you hear the metallic, screechy stuff when I'm bypassing this. So you'll see my cool little EQ curve here. I found crazy resonances, and they actually showed up mostly after using Torque. So Torque uses resynthesis, so it analyzes the, and obviously waves people know way better, but it analyzes the waveform, and then when you start tuning it up and down, it basically doesn't tune it exactly, but it analyzes and recreates it based on the original waveform and plays it, or recreates it on the fly. So that's how it's able to do the retuning. And it's by no means a perfect sound always, but I've been able to tune 2, 3, 4 semitones of like kicks and snares and some like tonal percussion with really good results. Like it often retains the punch, retains sort of the length of the body and the envelope of everything, and it's a really useful plugin. I'm quite excited. I've used it in a lot of things. So I went a little overboard. I have four snares just on the 8s, or the 2nd and 4 hit. And what is this one? Let's see. So yeah, and then I have claps. These are just sort of cutting low end out, corrective EQs. Oh, that one had a little more to it. This snare. Oh yeah. So there's this one. Yeah, and this one. I didn't need that much of the body there, but so I used those. To correct that, the EQ. Ooh, wrong spot. Claps, just EQ here. Panda a little separately. Everything adding something a little. Yeah, crazy 4 claps as well. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I thought so in this case. Okay, we'll go forward. Closed hat has some treatment as well. Okay, so I've got quite high low cut, just in case there is anything tiny rumble stuff. One knob pumper is a simple one knob sidechain tool. Taking this down to listen to the one especially. It's heavier. So this is just traditional sidechain pumping. I had it halfway up so as to make a little bit of more pumping sound to it. Then I have the same Pensado preset, Dave Pensado preset of the Panner of the Mondo Mod. And this is here just to create some interest and space. If I stop it, it's just quite in the center and doing that. And now I have it moving. Open hat just has some low cut. Open hat 2, similar thing. Well, it starts later here. What do we have here? Closed hat. And the closed hat has cutting and the pumper again, Mondo Mod again, and then we have this S1 imager that I've probably thought of using. Oh, okay. I've swapped the channels, but that doesn't do. I use S1 is a really cool and easy to use Widener plugin that I've very often use. It's a noisy shaker type of thing, just low cut. Sound called derp. And I've got the F6, which is a really nice plugin, and you can also this is is a dynamic EQ, so you could sidechain any of these bands with an external source. And wait, where I will figure out what I was trying to do here. What's really good about this plugin is that when you EQ with it and you drag, many of plugins do this, but when you drag, you can also see notes and tuning in cents as well as the frequency in hertz. So if you know your track key, you can either, you know, clean up frequencies that sort of don't belong to that key, or if something sounds wrong but you're not quite sure where that wrong is, you can quickly take a look at this, and if you determine that it's sort of in the wrong note, you'll find the stuff that is ringing. It's easier to find like that. Let's move on. There's a chord that is sort of body for the derp. Quite a lot of low end cut here, or well, a lot. That's a, I guess, relative term. In this one, I've widened this quite a lot. It's actually twice wider. And then I've used Trance X, which is like a well, you can accentuate or take down the ticks punch in the beginning of the sound, and I've just used a preset that this has a lot. But this is a multi-band one, which is really cool because you could, for instance, just do one band, or like just do high end or mids to add sort of audible tick and such to it, but not affect the low end at all. Or the other way around, you could just add some punch or thickness to your sound, affecting only the low end. Then I've added H delay, which is my favorite waves delay, directly on the channel. What I really like about this one is that it's really clean and easy to use. I almost always use it fully off analog because it actually adds noise, and if you do, on purpose that is, as per the analogness, and if you do add noise on several of these plugins, it starts adding up. And so if I do add noise, I usually add those on the send bus effect, so I can control it for, you know, a bunch of tracks at a time. The low cut and high cut filters are simple, easy, and good, and sort of work really well. I don't know, there's not much to it other than it's easy and it sounds good to me. I don't even remember ever loading a preset on this. There's a default that comes in, and then I just go and select the delay time, select feedback level somewhere around here where I'm now. It can feedback proper as well. You can make it, you know, feedback on itself if you want to. I don't usually use it, this one like that, but I've used The Logic tape delay, a lot of times like that, you can create some cool sounds using the feedback parameter. And I have a sound called Djembe, which, yeah, of course, is not at this spot, but in the beginning. Ooh. And I EQ'd a lot of low end out because it was fighting with the kick and the bass sounds, and this also uses sidechain. It's harder to hear now because there's no reference from the kick, but let's the kick, or actually a top loop on. This last bit, if you don't have the sidechain on, the kick and the djembe low end are fighting, so I decided to just duck the low end from under it. And we're coming to the ride, and let's see what we have there. Nothing much other than the sidechain. Sidechain pumping. And then there's a track called Big Snare. Here, first of all, I initially used it in the breakdown like this as a full-on big snare loud effect, but then I actually bounced a version of it with the tail sidechain pumping, and I use it here underlaid with everything in the intro. It really doesn't do anything other than creates a little bit of, well, I don't know, atmosphere. And this is just because it's sidechain pumping. From this point on, it's just the same fourth bit, and it's just looped until the next hit. And that's what it does till the breakdown. In a breakdown, I'm using the F6 to cut a frequency. So if you look at the big snare, so if we take that off and listen to just the snare. So when you listen to this snare coming, the initial attack and hit is great. But it also has that high noise, which I don't want to be sounding the whole way. So I'm just going to let it do that. But then I've just really sharply EQ'd it out, and I've automated the EQ band gain to do this. So that is a trick if you have something that sounds great, for instance, like a quick attacky hit like this. And like in this one, I like the low end rumble and the noise otherwise, but I don't like the that sounding all the way through. So I cut it out. Okay, next sound is nothing crazy here, just EQ'd. Push the high end a little bit. And it has a buddy, or actually two. But so here's another. And this one was another key as well. Let's see if we can see. Okay, so snare roll. No, it was in the older project. This has another, or was in another key or another note as well. But I've used the torque, and the torque is here still. So I tuned it 2 semitones up from the E it was, apparently. To match whatever these other snares are. Or to match or to work with them. This one apparently has as well been torqued. And so torque is one of my favorites in here, and I've boosted this around A. Looking for some body for the, maybe we should do C. And then next one is just another snare. Like here, and its body. I guess I'm into snares in this track. So here's the bass line. It's rather simple. I think Waves nailed this plugin. It's very I don't know if it sounds the same as a particular old school analog synthesizer, but the usability is really good. These oscillator type things or the waveform displays are great, and there's a lot of cool stuff if you go through the arpeggiator and sequence presets, that you can get a good jump start for your stuff. This one, mat friendly. Yes, torque is definitely a multi-use tool. So in a codex case, it was actually interesting because I went through the other Waves instrument plugins and I couldn't find an organ-based sound. But so I figured out a way to use codecs. and I'm not meaning I'm a genius doing that, but I just simply couldn't find the same sort of old school club organ based sound. So this is actually a wavetable that I dropped in of this one organ based sample that I got from, I don't know, it might be a sample bank or it might be just directly sampled from my Triton rack or maybe the Triton plugin, but it's the sort of M1 organ based type of sound. But now it is in codecs and now I can manipulate it. It's actually a little more distorted and I tweaked it to my liking here, but I got the same sound and the same vibe that the original sound was, which was not codec. And this is obviously providing the low end to that. And then we have one more doubling that. This is just giving it, it's very like low in the mix, but adding, or quite in a mix, but adding that high end upper tick sort of, so adds definition to this bass sound. So the first one is this Analogue Bass sound, a mix of square and saw bass, very sort of normal basic sound, quite filtered as well. A little bit of low boost and just a low cut to contain the low end a little bit. It was peaking a little bit here and there, so I cleaned it up just to get rid of a little bit of peakage. It doesn't really do much more. And then there's quite drastic low end pump, like the notes are on every eighth, but it takes out the first and the third, or the beginning of those, or actually, well, no, every eighth, what, fourth. And this HEQ is another EQ, and what this is, what its selling point, I guess, is that you can have, on each band, you can have a different EQ algorithm. And so they have US Vintage, UK Vintage 1 and 2, US Modern, UK Modern, and Digital 1 and 2. Those are more and less clean. I don't know how to describe all of them. It's best to just check them out. And actually, if it's just one band in your track, it might be hard to figure out what's different anyways. But some of the vintage stuff is based on, you know, the vintage EQs that did gentle curves, added resonance bumps and whatnot if you cut with them and whatnot. And then the digital ones are better for more like surgical cleanup stuff, like I've done here, for instance. But and what I really like about it as well is the piano roll below, so you can actually associate what you're cutting to the keys, the notes of the track. I'm a very visual mixer as well, though I have my eyes closed mixing moments as well, because I want to hear the sound and not just see it. But that is a very, very good feature in an EQ, I'd say. And then, so when we're in the organ bass, I added, depends on the track, depends on the sound, depends on my mixing, and just depends on my mood sometimes. Sometimes I add delays and reverbs as an insert on the channel itself. Though in that case, often the sound is more like or the reverb is more like part of the sound. It's not part of the space, so to say. And in here, you know, you're able to control the low end. So I took out a good bit of the low end of the reverb, so it doesn't add or compete or muddy up. But it definitely adds to the sound nicely. I don't remember what I did exactly. I was just basically probably found a preset for that, like around 4 seconds, I think that was. And then just started tweaking from there. Well, large hall it says. And I probably cut the low end a little more, and then this one, like you can see, side chaining. What I've done here is side chaining pretty much everything, a little less in the center, or around 500 to 1000 hertz, but it's still pumping the whole sound. And then under that's about the kick frequency, 64. It's actually doing more cutting or pumping so as to make room for the kick. And what do I have after? Okay, so yeah, so I didn't like that bzzz. So I just did a high cut filter there. This one, sort of kind of the opposite-ish, but not really. What I've done here is quite drastic EQ stuff, leaving the high end sort of there and making room for the actual 2 bass sounds. And then I've used Max Bass, and this is just creating a little bit of harmonics. Max Bass, sometimes I use it for actually adding bass if I use it, but most of the time I use it because it adds, you can add these harmonics to the second octave or the octave after or above, where the sub actually sits. And the reason for that is that our hearing actually hears, even though the sub is not louder, but you can hear the bass better if you hear the next octave or 2 higher harmonics as well, because you think you hear the bass better or the sound better. Hold on, I'm going to finish my thought here. So in this case, I added it so that it adds a little bit of sort of body on a, what range, what would I say? Let's see. Like in the, I don't know, 500 to 1000 hertz or so. Even though I've cut here, but I've cut something that was ringing there just to leave room more for the actual sub sounds. And then over 1000 and so on, I wanted the bite and the upper end there. The L2 doesn't really do much, couple of dBs of gate reduction on just rogue peaks. And then this one has the sidechain compressor as well. And now, what was the question? Matt Friendly, have you seen the, is it Backbone by Steinberg? I think I'm itching to get that, because that does sort of the same thing as Torque, but you actually have, it's kind of like a sampler doing it. It splits the drum sample into the attack portion and then the body portion, and then you can tweak it and synthesize that, and that looks like a dope plugin. I might have to get that. So Jack Digital, do you normally use just one sidechain for verb and delay that you use to mix in the track space, and then add rest inline. I'm not sure if I get what you mean. Like, sometimes I think in terms of space, and so that I would use 2 or 3 delays and maybe 2 or 3 reverbs that are sort of based on a similar sound but maybe have different lengths and some different qualities, but they are in the same family. And that's one train of or way of thinking, like you should have everything in a space that sounds similar, like it's in one space. But I don't always use that kind of thinking. I don't think like that. I could slap this kind of reverb on that sound and that kind of reverb on that sound and this kind of delay on here and that kind of delay there. I might even mix and match like 4th note delay and 4th dotted something, or 8th dotted this and that, whatever sounds good. But if like I said, if I use a delay and or reverb on a channel directly, then it has to do more with creating the sound of the channel. So for instance, I might have a bass sound or a lead sound, and then I would have a reverb behind it, but then I would have a sidechain pumping behind that. So then the sidechain or the reverb will be also be pumping. In some cases, I might also do a send effect to a similar or different reverb, so I would add overall reverb for that track. Or if that goes into a bus with several sounds, and I would add that bus, or from that bus a send reverb, so as to add a little bit of a touch of space to all of those. So it's just a mix and match, and somebody probably will cringe hearing that, but I kind of just go by feeling. And sometimes I might have one sound that has a little touch of like 3 or 4 reverbs, 1 or 2 on the channel itself, and then 1 or 2 somewhere else. I try not to reverb wash anything, but I often add a touch of something. It just makes it sound fuller. Or uh, 3 or 4 sidechains, that could be true. Sometimes I might have sidechain on separate tracks, and then I might have a bus pumping that collects a bunch of similar tracks, and then I might have sidechain pumping still on, say, a reverb send or delay send. And I don't see a problem with that. The only thing is that when you come back to a track after a few weeks or few months or a couple of years, it might be hard to figure out what you did and how. And then when you change one thing somewhere, there might be these relationships between sounds that when you change something, it might mess up the sound entirely unless you understand what you were doing, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I might have multiples of everything on one track. Okay, so then I have this sound doubled, and what was this about? Oh, it's not the same sound, but it does the same thing. So here, let's start from this one, the low end bass from, it's kind of like a analog bass. Organ bass on top of that. I just wanted the hollowness basically out of this. And then this sort of drony type of sound, which didn't even need EQ, it just had sidechain on it. It's quite thin, photo, so it doesn't need much. Okay. What do we have here? This is called Another TB. So it's out of codecs, and it's a preset called Another TB that I tweaked to my liking. So as you can see, it's probably a TB sample based wavetable, and I have automated the filter cutoff and some other stuff. What else? Distortion of the plugin as well. Yep. And then I have one knob pumper here so that it pumps. We got high pass frequency, so I'm cutting the low end more here in the drop than I am in the build-up. So here I'm cutting at 68 Hertz and I'm cutting double so as to give more space for the kick and the other actual low end sounds. I have an ARP sound that comes in with filter cutoff in flow motion. Okay. Then we can continue here. That's also flow motion. So flow motion is a weird one. I wish I could quickly explain how this thing works. Or it works so that there's 4 of these oscillator thingies, which in themselves basically, oh wow, I should have studied this because I'm going to make a fool of myself trying to explain it. It's basically, they have waveforms like sort of subtractive synthesizer. TB like a TB, exactly. But then the relationships, how you, let's see, what would be the best way to show this? Let's take that and that's not the best way. There. I don't know, I sort of don't even feel like trying to explain this because it's best just when you tweak. The good news is that when you come to this synth, you can just grab anything and start tweaking and it just works. It has envelopes and LFOs like any other synth, but what it doesn't have is basically doesn't have filters the same way as well, I mean it does, but maybe I should just cut the stream for half an hour, study, and come back and explain it to you. But the sound design and tweaking wasn't really straightforward to me initially, but once I got into doing stuff, I actually was able to, for instance, do this, which is interesting. Which I named Sandstorm Synth for an obvious reason. You can hear it there. So on this ARP sound, I didn't grab the usual C6 that I've used before, but I've actually got the F6 that can be used as a dynamic equalizer as well. And if you look at the screen, you can see what that is doing. I've got the audio sampling frequency, audio 2, which is the sidechain trigger routed here, and this is just basically routing the whole synth, or making the whole synth pump sidechain wise. I've also done some corrective stuff here, and then I have another instance of the same plugin that has one band taking out a nasty ring, I guess. Let's see. Yep. Then I'm making it wider. Okie dokie. So what you do with this flow motion, let's see if I can figure it out here. You can patch things to, you can modulate things between these oscillators, and then you don't only send one oscillator to, the main output, and you can pan your oscillators before you send them, but then you can also send them to the other oscillators. So is that FM sort of? So you can modulate the other oscillators with any of the three other oscillators. You can modulate any one of the other three, and then You can also, man. So let's just a minute. Alrighty. I wish I could be more enlightening about that. But this is actually how a lot of my tweaking anyways is. I just grab something and tweak something as long as it starts somehow making sense and sounding good to me. I'll show you the master bus, what I'm using right now. There is the HEQ, cutting the low end out from under, where is that, 40 or so. Couple of little tweaks there, just cutting, I guess, some sort of ring out. Renaissance compressor I use a lot in my, or usually in my master bus. What it does here is very little. It's supposed to just even out some stuff, and like you guys can see, the gain reduction is very low, 0.7. When this is peaking, it's barely touching 1 dB of gain reduction. I have an 8 compressor. Let's see what I made this do. Yeah, so this. This is just squeezing the crap out of this sound, but then only putting 15% back in a mix, so it's doing this basically. So what I'm doing is I'm adding this very squashed, distorted even compressed sound back to the mix, and it adds body and sort of fatness, I guess. Distortion is not really audible like that, but it, I guess, I don't know, brings the sound a little fuller. This one emulates a tape machine. This is off. When the yellow light is on, it's on. This adds a little bit oomph and roundness to the low end, and it sort of it doesn't make it wider, the sound wider, but it does something like that. It's supposed to emulate an analog tape machine, but I'm using it very little, and I'm taking all the wow and flutter and everything out of it. I'm just using the sort of fattening stuff that I like. This one is a new friend for me. It's the Infected Mushrooms Pusher. You can really crap out your sound quickly if you go crazy with this. This is a multi sort of, I don't know, compressor, harmonics, EQ, tickler. I don't know what all it does. But what you do with it is that you can sort of like a quick mastering tool slash fattening tool. You choose the key of your track, and then you start just pushing things. I think this adds harmonic distortion or harmonics, and you can like I'm using it very little in this, but off, on, off. So you select basically the range, frequency ranges. You select, you know, how much you want to push those ranges, how much you want added stuff. And like you can see, I already only have very little going on here because I want to do a little bit with many things that make a tiny bit of difference each one, and then hopefully the sum of all of those things is just adds to the final sheen and punch in width and depth of the track. So here, for instance, the high end. Have it at almost in zero. Alrighty. I went really nuts with this because it's all about the wave stuff. This is called MV2. It's is it max volume possibly, and it can add high level and low level compression for it in your track. Basically, I wanted to try and see if we could use this to add a little bit more of the fatness in the body of the track. I did not want this to be sort of heard. Tom 86. I use waves in every project, but no, not religiously, just waves. This is a project that I am showing off waves only. I'm actually, I guess I could say waves artist. If you go on their website and look for the artist list there and the electronic stuff, I am there. I get plugins from them, and I, report back, and I've done some sort of interview stuff and whatnot with them. And I'm supposed to actually record the same session that I'm doing now, but as like an edited video for them. I'm long overdue because I've just had all kinds of Corona and other stuff going on. But yeah, no, I don't religiously use any plugins really. That's probably why I don't get paid by the manufacturers to use anything either. But I like it that way, in the sense that I don't want to be locked into one thing. So I use waves. I use them a lot, and I've used them for 20 years soon. The L2, the R verb, the H comp, the H delay, the H verb, the Kramer tape everywhere, R compressor everywhere, pretty much every project. I really like the Shop's Omnichannel, or Shep's Omnichannel. It's amazing, this channel strip that has everything in it. It has compression, gate, EQ, limiter, various types of EQ and compressor algorithms and everything. It's really good for almost any channel you want to control and mix, for instance. But then at the same time, Kilohearts, Cableguys, Izotope. I use a lot of different manufacturers, but this is about wave stuff. After all of that, I added a Q2, which is just a little bit of low cut. And the low cut happens here. Well, actually, so here's the thing, I guess, why the Master Bus has a couple of extras. In this build-up, if I took all the track automation off, I'll show you what happens. All the track automation off. So building up, kind of building up. But with the track automation, I'll tell you what to listen to here. So first, Q2 band 1 frequency. So this low cut here is going to go up towards the end of the build-up. Also, the band 2, which is this one, it's going to go up. It's going to create this sort of resonance peak. The band 2 gain is also go up. That's, well, they go to hand in hand. Then there's R verb that has a quite long, where do we have? Well, not that long actually, 2 seconds 40. Decay, and then I'm controlling the wet dry, and then I'm controlling the output left and right amount as well, and which is going down towards the end of the build-up, because there's the reverb and other sort of pile up going up. So what this does is it adds a little bit of like building resonance peak thing. It goes up in frequency. Then we have the reverb, which creates sort of a reverb wash, and the whole thing thins out towards the end of the build-up, while the perceived volume level stays kind of same or even builds up a little bit. And then they all go back to normal for the drop. So the drop comes back in sort of thick and, I don't know, proper dropping. Listen. So check out the wet and dry here. Jack Digital, no, I actually haven't used the serum yet. New one. The list of plugins I've used today, that's I can definitely do that, but I don't know if this helps if I'm going too fast. Q10 is a Waves 10 band EQ, one of the first Waves plugins from a long time ago, though got a fresh updated face, I don't know, year or whatever ago. C1, this is a compressor, but this is a gate mode of it, or gate preset of it. Also one of the first ones. Just use it as a gate there, sidechained gate. One knob. This one is the filter. They have a pumper. They have a distortion one of these one knobs. They just do one thing and do it well. H delay, my favorite, well, not just favorite Waves delay, but favorite delay plugin ever. I think I probably pull this up most of the time with delays. Smack Attack is an attack and transient tweaking plugin. This also, to my understanding, is one of those resynthesis plugins where it analyzes your sound, your wave form, and then you know, you can add to your attack, lengthen or shorten the sustain, and so on, and sort of shape the envelope of your audio. And then there's a limiter as well. And then one knob, that was pumper. That is a sidechain emulator, and I have another sidechain type of thing here. So this is 4-band, well, sort of 6-band, multi-band dynamics processor, so you can use it on its own or an external sidechain trigger, which I'm using it here for. So I'm using it to make various channels on this mix, do sidechain pumping, and I have a sidechain trigger kick somewhere on top of here. Mondo Mod, this is also an old Waves plugin. Has a couple of amazing, or couple million amazing presets. I've used the Dave Pensato double panner here. It's a modulator thing that you can use just for simple like tremolo, but you can also use it for phasing and all kinds of effects. Create space, or create some sort of doubling, or create some sort of weirdness as well. High neck. Okay, one knob. Fatter. This I actually don't remember, but I believe this does some compression, and it could also add harmonic, like some harmonics to the added harmonics, harmonic distortion possibly, but it makes sound fatter. I know it's stupid to say, but it's called fatter. These one knob things anyways, something's happening under the hood, but you just tweak that one knob and listen if you like it or not. Torque is the drum tuning plugin. You listen to your drum and look at the waveform, and you try to find the main frequency of your drum body. So like snare or kick drum, for instance. And then when you find it, if it's not in tune to your track, you can just tune it with this main knob here. And then sometimes the tuning makes it too loud or too quiet, and then there's the torque trim where you can just tune it or tune that up or down. And the speed setting, you can tweak it back and forth. Basically, I don't have a rule for what would work, but sometimes there's artifacts, so sometimes it doesn't tune it properly, or the attack portion is tuned as well, or something like that. So then you can just try and find a sweet spot where your attack basically is untouched, and then the body will be tuned how you want to. This for me was quite trial and error. I rarely actually have touched the threshold, but a couple of times, and I guess that is sort of internally when the analysis happens, it so as to differentiate the attack and the decay or the body part of the sound as well. Ego Studio, welcome. I hope I'm making some sense. This HEQ is just another Waves EQ. The cool thing is that you can pick algorithms for each band, from US Vintage to UK Vintage 1 and 2, US Modern, UK Modern, Digital 1 and 2, and those all have different qualities to them, which I couldn't describe without a PDF right now. So you just have to take a listen to them. But they, the vintage ones would probably have similar sort of softness or weirdness as some of the old EQs have, and they are all, I'm guessing, modeled after like Neves or I don't know what have you. And you just have to try it. But the cool thing is that you can have several different kinds of algorithms on different bands on this. And like I already said, I really like that you have the piano roll below here, so you actually know where you are in the frequency spectrum, but also where you are in key wise or note wise on your in a musical sense. And then we are going forward. One pumper, S1 imager, really quite old one. This as well, I use this a lot. This is just a stereo image widener. You can also tilt an image sort of to left or right. I rarely use it for that, but I use it for just widening. And this works quite well with, it's quite well mono compatible. So when you mono stuff after using this, it folds nicely, quite nicely back. So your sound doesn't disappear as happens when you use something that uses phase, for instance. And yeah, I like this a lot. I use it a lot. I often use this in a bus as well. I have this and maybe like an EQ and maybe a reverb, and I have like 200% widening, and I just send a tiny touch of something in that bus. You wouldn't even really hear it, but it just adds a little bit of like this really white outer edge of your stereo field space to that sound. Trance X. This is a transient control plugin as well, and it's a multi-band one. There's 4 bands, and this I've usually just gone to the presets and started tweaking from there. But for instance, if you have a really punchy track and it sounds really well otherwise, but then it doesn't have something like tick or click up there, You could go to the middle or high-end bands and try and boost them up, for instance, and find something there. For me, this is very much a trial and error type of thing, but very usable tool. And obviously, as it's a multi-band, you can just tweak the band crossover frequencies, and I don't know, there's not much to it. Favorite delay? I don't know why I'm not really much of a fan of modulated delays, so I often go about this one just clean. But in this case, I have used a little bit of just 2 out of 100% of modulation depth, and the rate is whatever it is, 0.18. This is a really handy one with the high pass and low pass, like every delay should have. So you can have the dry sound go dry however you want, but then you can control how much the delayed signal has, high and low end frequencies. Very straightforward. You just set it, select what kind of delay time you want, and that's it. Feedback. And with often analog off, but often 1, maybe 2 on, but pretty much never 3 or 4 on, because it adds too much in my taste. Well, the analog qualities, noise, and not a fan of that. Little goes a long way with that, and I often have that as an insert in my channels. Dynamic EQ, and can take sidechain from whatever sidechain source you might have. Another track that, for instance, you could have this on a synth channel, and you could use a vocal as a sidechain trigger, and then one band, say from 1000 to 2000 hertz or something like that, push that down when the vocal is up or on, push that down 1 or 2 dBs to give a little bit of room for the vocal. And because it's only one band, for instance, the vocal will mask that lowered frequency band, so you don't really realize that it's doing it. So you just nicely cheat and get a little bit of room for your vocal in a very full mix. What else? Max bass. Oh, H reverb and max bass. Max bass adds harmonics to the original bass sound, and it actually makes it easier to hear bass or think you hear bass on a crappy speaker system that doesn't really have low end, for instance. It also can really boost the actual bass as well. Handy plugin, but you can really go overboard with that, and then your mix is really muddy and crappy. Analog class for me, well, there's only one analog piece of gear here, and that's the let's see if I can show it right quick. Oh, that's that beauty right there. That's the Moog Sub 37. That's the only analog piece of gear that I have in this studio, and I love it, and I can definitely show it around one of these days. But and I mean, obviously there's a lot to it, but if you're interested in analog stuff, I don't think I am the main guy in that. You should ask somebody like Marcus Schersau or Prof, or maybe Joel or Dead Mouse about that. But yeah, I really like the Moog. I really do love it, but I'm not the most analog guy there is. The H Reverb is crazy nice. It has pretty much everything you want in a reverb. It's highly, highly controllable. The actual reverb, the actual what do you call that? Oh, come on. Early reflections, yeah. You can tailor the tail, you can tailor dampening, you can tailor the early reflections with filter, you can EQ everything, you can, I don't know, there's so much to it. There's dynamics control, you can duck something. I don't even know what to talk about it, because you would have to show like 10,000 examples, but it can do pretty much any reverb thing that you can think of, and there are a lot of hardware that people have emulated. For instance, if you think of this, there's classic plates, there are emulations of early digital hardware. If you know any of those early hardware that are classics, like these numbers here should tell you something. But that's would be like a reverb for studying on its own for a couple of hours, I would say. L2 is the limiter from waves that I use. I mean, the L3 came after that, and in some ways is better, and the multi-band L3 version is something that I've sometimes used. But the L2 is like a basic workhorse reverb. I think this sounds better than the original L1. And if I need something to just crudely cut rogue peaks and stuff like that in a channel, I use this. I pull it up and I don't know, there's nothing to it. Just set how many dBs or whatever you want to cut, and that's it. But it's one of my most used waves plugin. Well, that's a good question. So L1 is the first one. Probably, is that like literally almost the first ever limiter plugin like that? Let's see if I can quickly show him. L. This is going to be a little slow because I have so much Ultra Maximizer. Well, actually I haven't seen this interface for it because I haven't used it since they updated it. Waves. Let's take the multi-maximizer. So let's start from here. The L2 is a stereo plugin for a one-band stereo plugin that it's limiting based on something. I don't know how a limiter exactly works, but it, you know, cuts the peaks and tries to round them so that it's transparent as long as possible. But then when you go overboard, then it just starts sounding like crap and eating your bass. The L3 single band is the same as this multi-band, but you don't have any control over it. The multi-band is you can do 5-band of limiting, and how this works is that you give sort of preference to some of the bands. So if you want your bass to be intact and not be eaten by the limiting, you give it priority. And then if you have a band that you think that is not heard however much you crush it, or if you just want to sacrifice it, you can do that. And it's actually quite cool when you get into it, but I always found that I was not able to make things loud enough with either of these wave plugins compared to some other limiters, or but I've used these a lot, and this can act a little bit like an EQ as well, or multiband compressor for your final mix. And then there are wait a minute. Hold on a sec. So yeah, you can tweak all of these. If you know what you're doing, you can tweak all of the bands, all their separate gains, and also release, character. And with the let's just take the L3 Ultra Maximizer. So what you can, what this has is that it should be basically the same thing, these two, but you have profiles here where you can, it says loud and proud, lean and mean, low level loudness. It does different things to it. Extreme analog, supposed to emulate analog sounds, and here you basically can do the same stuff manually. You can tweak different bands, and again, there's the profiles are here as presets, and then you can tweak from there. And in the L3 single band, you just select which one, and there's no controls over them other than the threshold and out ceiling. And then there is one more, the 16. And like you can see, I'm going here through the full plugin menu because I don't have those in my sort of speed dial. And this is just a boosted version of the L3 multi-maximizer, I'd say. So it's, I believe, a 16 band version of the thing. So you can be more, you can tweak more closer to or narrower bands and whatnot. I haven't used this one in a long time either, but they're all useful, and the same goes with this one. I like the EQ like qualities as well, because if you can totally change the sound still in the master bus stage if you want to, but I mostly prefer to mix and master my track, you know, with other stuff than a limiter, and I use the limiter just to take the peaks out or cut the last dBs if I need to go loud. While I use the auto release on most occasions. Is it? Hold on a sec. Yeah, I pretty much always use the auto release. I don't know. Obviously, I have tweaked it, but I rarely use L2 in a way where I would need it so, or need to tweak that so that those matter, because I try to avoid extra squeezing anyways. I don't know if I have a good example here. What I mean is that some bass sounds, for instance, might have a huge attack, like 6 dBs of attack, but it's very short term, and then the body is really thick and fat and heavy. So to me, it doesn't matter what I use to crush the attack or cut the attack. I can take that down, say 4 dBs, and it doesn't affect the sound that I'm after, like, at all. It just takes the extra headroom eating attack out. I could even use just bit crusher and you know, not crush bits, but just cut it. Use that as a slicer cutter. So, for instance, in that case, the release doesn't really matter too much. I've used most of the time these days. I have an Izotope 9, the maximizer, as my last one with the true, whatever you call that, the true, so that, you know, it makes sure that it doesn't go over 0 dB, even with the, like, what do you call that? Like internal sample peaking. What's that term again? So like I said, I really don't kind of care, or I don't see the need to. It doesn't affect the sound that I'm after. Yeah, true peak limiting. That's it. Thanks, man. Sorry, Matt Friendly. Let me do this for you. I don't allow Steinberg backbone. Let's see if I can quickly find it, because that definitely is worth checking out for you guys. Boom. Like that. That looks cool. I think I'm gonna at least try it out. Maybe buy it. Okay, so what else do we have? I think, and so here I am using the L316. Okie dokie. So I think that's about it for the project. Are you guys, do you guys have any questions? Don't ask anything difficult. I seem to have not been on my A game today, though. I kind of don't care. I had a teeth filling done and my back is hurting like a motherfucker, so whatevs. Do I send my mix downs to a mastering engineer? That is an incredibly good and smart question. Yes, I do, most of the time when it comes to an actual release. But then I master my stuff myself all the time, though, because I make music. Sometimes a track is done or in a playable phase months and months and months before a release. So I have my own sort of mastering chain that evolves and changes sometimes based on the track a little bit, but I do my home masters, which are easily playable. They go maybe 90-95% of what my mastering engineer can do, and I'm happy with my own masters for club gig play and, you know, demo play for whoever. But then I do sort of want an extra set of ears for my track, so I'm happy to always send my stuff to my mastering engineer. Normally it's Henkka at Chartmakers in Helsinki, Finland, and what he's amazing about is that I can send him the final mix, and I can even send him a reference master and say, like, hey, here's what I got, and then he listens to the final mix without mastering, and he's like, well, you know, before you send it to me for mastering, I think you would benefit, or the master would then benefit for me fixing something beforehand, and he's not too stuck on his ways, or that, you know, I don't have a say or this or that. So he listens to me, and I've many times sent him a master back saying, hey, this is great, but can you do this or that, or do you think we could do this or that? Just like, and he easily, no argument, sends me a different kind of master if I need to hear it. Sometimes the first one was correct, I just needed to hear a different one, and so on. But it's highly beneficial. And then also, every time I do my own master of the track beforehand, I send it over and get a master back from him. I learn something, so I really like doing that. Let's do this one last listen through. Oh, recognize that? Atomic. Hi. Alrighty, so that's that. Track doesn't have a name, and there will be a recognizably similar-ish sounding track coming out at some point that I'm working on. But I made this one for demoing all the Waves plugins that I use and more. And this, I'm going to be recording a similar type run through, except that hopefully a little better and smoother than today, and no power outs, please. So yeah, go check out waves.com. They have single plugins, they have bundles for electronic dance music, rock, this and that. They have signature plugins by mixing engineers, mastering engineers. all kinds of stuff. One thing that I forgot to mention here, but it's for a reason, because this thing doesn't have a vocal. They have a couple of, like, so is it JJP vocal, for instance, and then they have the Kramer. Oh boy, I gotta see so I don't get it wrong, but they have these sort of vocal multi things. For instance, this one, that are really amazing for CLA, yeah, the Chris Lord Alge or Algae, I don't know how the name is pronounced. These are amazing. They have like compressors, presence, so probably EQ, stereo field, reverb, delay, and a couple like added harmonics stuff in these, and they're just dead simple to slap on a vocal track or vocal bus and start tweaking. And those guys are like the best mix engineers there has been in the last several decades, I guess, and they know how a vocal sounds good, what frequencies to push and what to cut and whatnot. And they, with waves, they've put those in simple use, few fader plugins, and I use a CLA vocal, for instance, quite a lot, and just instantly putting a whatever preset or the default on and starting from there, it makes your vocal sounds more, I don't know, professional or release worthy. And obviously no preset is made for just right for your sound, but you go from there and tweak him. Highly recommend it. Check him out. Yeah, exactly, Nick. Exactly the standing out, cutting through those plugins easily. Just push a little, and there's the right EQ frequencies and right kind of compression, sort of like snapping fingers, and it's cutting through. Awesome. Jay Harnois, UAD. Actually, I've used UAD stuff. I've been in the studios where they are, but I don't have UAD stuff myself, and I couldn't really say much of them. But I know several of my producer friends use them and swear by them. Yeah, Magic. There's also whatever, there's like Slap or Smack. Hold on, Slap. Slap is one. Well, that's like slap delay, but as Bite and Spank, those would be most likely then compressor stuff. Bite, Roof. Yeah. So these are pretty cool. And again, remember, guys, first of all, preset using is not wrong, but then at the same time, no preset that you pull out of any plugin really will be out of the box exactly for you, because they were not made for your audio. So you don't just pull a preset, but you set the thresholds and set the inputs and outputs, and then start tweaking whatever parameters there are that actually have to do with your particular audio. So with the Waves plugins, there are tons of presets, for instance, and they're good starting points, but you need to know kind of and study what they do. And the presets actually are a good way to do the studying as well. Mm-hmm. Nick, I don't remember which one it is, or who it is by, but there's also a plugin called like Sound Goodiesizer or something like that, that I find quite funny. All right. my dear fellow humans, and aliens too, if you happen to be hanging out. Oh, hey, so those of you who are amazing enough and are subscribers on the channel, I just had Vicious Code, thank you so much, if you're still hanging out, create a sub-only channel on the Discord, Darude channel, and the sub-only channel right now has one link where you can download something. It is actually my remix or extended version of my Panda Limits remix that I did about a year ago. And I just realized that the extended mix is not out anywhere else than whatever I did a DJ sharing back then. So it's yours to grab, and I have a couple of other things. There's, for instance, Waiting for Winter, Gabriel and Dresden, the Darude remix of it that I will be sharing someday soon. And then I'm going to start doing some sample stuff soon, and I already did some earlier in my earlier streams, and I'm going to share some of those sample pack stuff in there as well. The vocal mix of Sandstorm is done. It's played a couple of times. Hyvää iltaa, Lieto. Okay, so my producer, i.e. wife, has said that, dude, it's about time to come and eat and leave those poor watchers, viewers alone. So I got to call it a night pretty soon. But yeah, so or we can do one thing. Let's do this and let's see that. If you insist. Boom. There we go. Okay, yeah, because that's smart. I don't have the audio of the desktop audio coming out of. So here we do. That's nice. Let's go to the right output. Okay, there we go.
That peak is so bananas. It's like, where do you go from there? That peak is so bananas. I mean, you could always go.
All right, so that's my man, Dave Dresden. I sampled him the other week on his one of his club quarantine sessions, and this is
so ridiculous. I sing Sandstorm, and people like it. And people like it.
all right, so fast forward.
So ridiculous. I sing Sandstorm. And people like
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's the end.
My brother Dave. I don't dare to play it any more than that because I'm gonna get a copyright strike. Fuckers. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks, thanks, guys. Wow, today was cool. First time for everything. Power out doing stream. I guess I gotta go all dead mouse in it and get like a Tesla battery pack powered little antenna station here and just go off the grid so I can just keep on sending stuff to the grid. Oh boy, is the F word not allowed? Hey, thank you guys so much. Again, if you are a subscriber, check out the Discord channel. If you're not on Discord yet, this alone is worth it. Discord is sort of a chat room for all kinds of stuff. There's also audio and video chat possibility, which I'm considering at some point for the subs at least. So there were a couple of guys that I saw that said hi on the sub chat. And so go there. And the rest of you who are not subscribers, it's quite okay. Don't worry about it. The amount that I will be on Discord, which so far hasn't been much because I'm quite busy and I am connecting with you here right now like this. But I will be chatting and checking out Discord elsewhere as well. So if you have something to say there to me, feel free to use the, open to everybody channels. And if you want some exclusivity with me and the other subs, well, sub and hit me up on the sub channel. Thanks, guys. I will wave bye and I'll see you most likely on Wednesday. Oh yeah, you should I don't know what else you need to do, but you need to link your Discord account with your Twitch account so for it to work. All right, guys. If you find it troublesome, you hit me up, or there are many guys here in the chat who know a lot of that as well, or Google Discord and Twitch linking or whatever the term is here. But yeah, so see you next time. Oh, wow. Let's do that. Raid Ruben. Why not? Raid Ruben de Grande. Ruben de Ronde. This channel has follower, subscriber only chat, so we are going to raid with 56 viewers and we're raiding now.